Hello Saints, welcome in again for another video we call the midweek video. Yesterday, I'm recording this on Monday, and so yesterday in my message at Abundant Life Church, most of you watching this are part of Abundant Life Church, but several aren't. I referenced a quote by C.S. Lewis that I could not remember. And after our service, my son Adam reminded me of the quote, and then I remembered that I had written a Kernels of Truth. If you don't know what that is, just email me at pastor@alcmountainjuliet.com. But I'd written in a Kernels of Truth 6 years ago this quote. I wonder why I couldn't remember it. And the quote is this, is the humility is not thinking less of yourself, but it's thinking of yourself less. To have a proper perspective on humility, we have to understand that statement. And I'll read it again with my glasses this time. Humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. Sometimes we think humility is, and how we achieve humility is to put ourselves down, to low rate ourselves, to criticize ourselves. And of course, what we wind up with sometimes in attempting that is false modesty, false humility. And that's not God's position at all. God created you. You know, you have a birthday because God decided that you should have a birthday. You know, your parents had something to do with it, but without God, there would have been nothing. No one. You would not exist today. So you have a birthday because God cares about you, and because God, upon creating you in His image, there's a value, and the value is in Him. And then He gave His Son to die for you and to create a situation where He would be our substitute, pay for our sins so that we could become born again. So when you start trying to low rate yourself and put yourself down, sometimes you have to be careful because you are devaluing the work of God and the fact that He had the wisdom and the wherewithal and the choice just to decide for you to be born to begin with. Well, obviously, sometimes we deal with the opposite of that. We think too much of ourselves. We begin to think the value is, our perceived value of ourselves is greater than that which is real. And I was reminded of this passage in Philippians 2, where Paul says, if there's any encouragement, if there's any consolation of love, if there's fellowship with the Spirit, affection and mercy, he said, fulfill my joy by thinking the same way, or being in unity, or having the same love, sharing the same feelings, and focusing on one goal, and that goal is the kingdom. And then I've highlighted these verses, do nothing out of rivalry or conceit, but in humility consider others as more important than yourselves. Everyone should look out not only for his own interests, but also for the interests of others. So, humility is not a complete and total disregard of ourselves. As C.S. Lewis said, it's not thinking less, it's just thinking of ourselves less. It is a proper perspective as we relate to others. And he says, consider others. Now that's the key phrase. Consider others more important. The New King James there, consider them better than you. I don't dislike that, but it gives, if you don't do a little research, you think that somebody's better than you. No one's better than anyone else. But it does say consider, in other words, reckon, or in child's terms, let's pretend for a moment that person over there is more important than me. And let's act in such a manner. Now what would happen if you, or let me start it this way, what would happen if I treated you like you were more important than me? And if you treated me like I was more important than you? Man, what kind of world would we have? We would have no wrangling, we would have no arguing, we would have no jockeying for position. I had a man tell me one time I'd step on my grandmother to get a promotion in this business. We would have none of that. Paul is saying, let's have a proper perspective. So in humility, consider others more important than you. And then treat them thusly. Treat them as if they were more important than you. As if they were, quote unquote, better than you. We know they're not, and they're not more important than you. But if you treat them that way, then you achieve at least close to what humility, real humility is. Everyone should look out not only for his own interest. So here we go. We know that it's right to look out for our interest. It's right to be good, to be diligent, and to pay attention to our life, pay attention to what's around us, pay attention to what's in our hand. It's right to look out for our interest, but never to the exclusion of the interests of others. And as a matter of fact, if you go by the previous sentence, then we really should first and foremost look to the interests of others. He goes on, I'm not going to read the passage, but he goes on to say, look, we should have the mind of Christ. And the mind of Christ was this: He's the Son of God, He's the Lord of Lords, He's the King of Kings, and yet He comes to earth in the form of a fragile, innocent child, an innocent baby, born like all the rest of us through the birthing process. He didn't consider equality with His Father something that He should grasp or grapple for. He didn't consider equality something He should argue about, or He wasn't insecure about His position, but He came to earth and laid aside His privileges. He emptied Himself in such a manner that He could be like one of us. And of course Jesus, because He was without sin, He knew no sin. Jesus never had one iota of insecurity or lack of identity. He had none of that. The devil tried to tempt Him with that, but it never worked. But He was able to demonstrate for us what real humility is. And then I thought later on about this verse in 1 Peter, where he says, likewise, younger men, be subject to elders. All of you clothe yourselves with humility toward one another. So let's think about putting on an article of clothing that is called humility. Because God resists the proud. He's quoting Proverbs 3:34 here. God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Now, which side of that fence do you want to be on? Do you want to be on the side that God is resisting you? Or do you want to be on the side that God's giving you grace, more grace, as the song says? Then he finishes up by that statement by saying this: humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that He may exalt you in due time. I pointed out yesterday that in due time, what that means is not right now. It means it's not right now, it's in due time. Humble yourselves, and Derek Prince said one time that God can't humble you, won't humble you. He can humiliate you and will humiliate you, but we have to humble ourselves. It's a laying down of our life. It's a posture that we assume. Humble yourselves that He may exalt you, that He may elevate you, because that's what He wants to do. So, proper perspective of humility. Let's keep that in mind today, that we would, as followers of Jesus Christ, that we would not think less of ourselves, because again, you're devaluing God's word. Let's not think less of ourselves, but maybe we can think of ourselves less if our posture is toward others and thinking of them, looking out for their interest, and see what would benefit them the most. Now, I hope that helps you this week, and you can go out there and act like somebody. Good day.